Hello, casters, and welcome to the first discussion video of the Casters Corner YouTube channel. I am going to be your host today. My name is Sunny, formerly of the Top Cut Yu-Gi-Oh podcast, and I am here today with all of the co-hosts. We all finally made it into a video. So, of course, you all by now know Law. He is the wonderful maker of the deck profiles that have been on the channel so far. And of course, the other hosts of this channel, we have Trishula TTV.
My brain's small.
Indeed. And of course, we have Joseph Rothschild, aka
Trishula. That's right, it's me. I'm going to Worlds, baby.
All right. I'm glad that we have one good player in here. And how does it feel to be going to Worlds, Mr. Rothschild?
Good. It feels good. I'm bringing fives.
Ooh,
That seems like the strategy to be.
Solid pick. Are you running crabs in your 5-stick?
Absolutely not. No way. Oh, God. We'll get into it today, but nothing makes me happier than never having to pay for a... can we cuss on this?
As long as it's not the first minute, preferably. We're not monetized yet, so I'd say you can cuss.
As long as I never have to cast a fucking Moose Station again. I can't pay for that guy anymore.
Unfortunately, Moss Station is not out of our hair yet.
Why would you pay for Moose Station? Don't you just play him like Thunder Enchanted in defense and sit on him forever?
Good point. Good point.
How are you supposed to ascend into Astrabbit and trigger the effect?
Exactly.
And this is why we have Trish here, because he's the good one, despite what he might say.
That is not a play that I endorse, by the way. just FYI, I do not endorse that play.
None of us are good enough to know any better. You can say whatever you want. We'll just agree. This is kind of, in my head, maybe going to be my contribution because it's what I'm familiar with is the discussion type content. I've done one or two of these. So what we're going to talk about today is all Daybreak related. As of this video coming out, this week Daybreak is legal all across the entirety of Elestrials. You can play in your local OTSs, things like that. First season of organized play is live as of September 1st.
Get that divine favor, everyone.
Yes,
Oh God,
yes.
I
So
love
make sure that you're
Divine
playing
Favor
in your
so
locals to
much.
acquire that divine favor.
Fun fact about Divine Favor, by the way. You get more Divine Favor by just showing up to locals and playing locals every week than winning a major tournament. It's awesome.
That's actually really good for me specifically. I'm down.
I love that because I have no OTS for this game. It's great.
I don't have one
It's
within
awesome.
6 hours of me. I get it.
I have an OTS 10 minutes down the road, so I think I'm the odd one out here.
You have multiple.
Man, you're winning the prize card. That's
Technically,
crazy.
I have multiple, but one of them isn't running organized play quite yet. They're still trying to spin up.
We are, of course, going to give, before we get into the Daybreak, a couple of just quick little updates on things coming up in the Elestrals card game as a whole. I'm going to plug it. There is a case tournament coming up if you're anywhere near Kokomo, Indiana on October 19th. Outside of that, as we said, on September the 1st, we have organized play starting, so be sure to go to your local OTSs. And if they're not already an LGS, or if they're not already an official Elestrals partner store, you can fill out the paperwork online, submit everything, and get your OTS involved. And if you do that, then when they get accepted as an OTS, you can get them to get the tournament packs. That way, when you host locals, you get tournament packs where you can pull stellars and things like that. And of course, if you are the person that gets your locals signed up, then you'll get a free booster box with that. I'm trying to think if there's any other major Elestrals things coming up, anything else worth discussing besides obviously the release of Daybreak.
I mean, should we discuss the side deck changes that are coming up on September 1st?
Absolutely.
That's a good one.
Yeah, there are organized play changes. With that is, as you mentioned, Law, the side deck is changing from 12 cards to 15 cards, which will mirror Yu-Gi-Oh! I know. I'm not sure about Magic or Lorcana or any other major card games.
They're mostly 15. I think it's great. 12 was like a weird number. I don't know why they picked it. Number one winner of the 15 card change, Dense Fog. Dense Fog now a 3 of in everything. Congratulations to Dense Fog.
I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about Dense Fog here in just a little bit. It's at the top of my list.
Of course, we also want to mention that if you are interested in becoming a judge for Elestrals, check out the official judge training materials. They're all available on the Elestrals website. We can actually leave a link to that in the description. Through that, you can go in and take the Elestrals judge exam. The first level of the judge exam gets you the role in the Discord server of rules helper or something like that. Once you pass that, it's a multiple choice open book 20 question test. You have 45 minutes to take it once you start it. And after you take the 20 question multiple choice test, from there, if you pass it, then they'll send you an email at some point once they review everything to take the stage 2 judge exam if that's something you want to do. And the stage 2 judge exam will actually get you an invite. There's, if I'm not mistaken, going to be a private server just for judges. That way judges always have access to rulings questions and things like that. But just the first level of judge exam does let you, have the authority or whatever, I guess you want to call it, to judge locals and things like that. And you can actually give rulings reliably.
Can I jump in while we're on the topic? Is it too early in our career to start causing problems?
No,
Never
that's why
too
we're
early.
here.
I need you to sign up for these judge documents, get certified, whatever, and then start petitioning to change the rulings on Galaxy and PTA.
5-0, you're insane. You're out of your mind.
5-0 Galaxy is a psyop by Big Whale. It should be a 5-2, and
like Sarah,
anyone who says otherwise is a fed.
You mean a 3-2?
Yeah, whatever I said. Yeah, that one, 3-2. It should be a 3-2. Do me a solid and start the revolution. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're going to do that by making them change the chart on when things get calculated, and we're going to put swap stats at the top. That way it's the first thing calculated instead of the last.
Yeah, I literally don't care how they change it. It just should not be a 5-0. That's silly.
And we all agree.
All I was going to say is get as many judges into the program as possible so we don't have to keep pinging Siberian and Skyhawk for every rulings question.
You would think that with the pull that the people in this exact call have with somebody like, I don't know, rules manager Giant Skyhawk, we would have had this fixed by now. But no, turns out he has even more ability to tell us no than the entirety of the player base. So sound off.
Yeah, he's been corrupted by Big Whale. We need to start a revolution.
Siberian pretty much has made their entire MO making me as pissed off as possible for like the last 8 or 9 years. So like as soon as I heard they were on the rules team, I was like, oh, I know this Galaxy is not going to work right. It's going to work in some cute little way that makes me irritated.
Well, success. They have achieved their goal.
I love that Galaxy is Denko Seka. That's awesome. It's just awesome. Like Elestriad season 2 turned into 5s. I think in like week 4 because both me and Bean Soldier had like the same realization. It's like, dang, Galaxy is just Danko Seka and no one has back row. That's crazy. This thing's going in every deck IQ for the rest of the season. And then everybody just started playing 5s. It was great. It was awesome.
It's crazy that realization was made in what is functionally a sealed format, I think. And it turned out to be so strong that it just carries over perfectly into the wider metagame. I feel like that's not something that should happen.
I mean, to be completely fair, yes, the Elestriad is a sealed format, but we're at a stage of the game, for Season 2 at least, everything was condensed down into 2 sets, and realistically, you could get basically whatever you needed just from opening 1 box of each set. So yes, sealed, but at the same time, kind of constructed just because of the limitations of the card pool currently. That's nothing against the game. It's just we're still in the early stages.
I would like to chime in that is a lie. It was such a doom fest trying to like build real decks in Elestriad. I think half the people ended up on 5s because no one had cards. Like no one could build anything.
Mike, Joseph,
I've never
you
seen.
were in the Elestriad. Can you just give like the TLDR for anybody that may not have watched all 50 episodes of season 2?
Oh, so the first 3 weeks we just got ass blasted repeated. That's not true. So
Week 1 we didn't get ass blasted.
Week 1
it
we
was
didn't
weeks
get ass
2
blasted.
through like 5 that we got ass
Weeks
blasted.
2 through 5 we got ass blasted, mostly because people on the Cryo Scorches had the ability to build for sealed, and we just were not all the way there on like what exactly sealed entails.
I don't even think it was that. It took a 25-hour me working on a spreadsheet to figure out how do we get people to rotate their trades around so that we had Gorgon's Gazes just to compete with the back row that they had. We did not have, no one on our team had back row until week 4 or 5. At all. We were queuing with just shields and that was it. And it was like, oh, okay, I have no back row, I lose.
There is an answer to that. Pull better.
Well, there was also an answer to it in that 4 weeks in, Wirtz figured out that there's this card in the format called Helios's Chariot Ride. and it just like ruined an entire 2 weeks of the Elestriad because everyone was playing this dog ass card and losing to this dog ass card. Oh man, that was terrible.
I remember that because that was me and Wirtz together. Like, this was in week 1, like week 1 or 2, because like in the first couple weeks of Elestriad, I think most of the Thundercasters and some of our other casters were on like Circle the Sky. I had gotten off a plane, and I don't remember what event I was coming from, and my phone died, and I called like a taxi because I couldn't get an Uber. And this taxi took like the long way. Like, I don't live far from the airport, right? Like, I live maybe like 30, 40 minutes from the airport. I got stuck in this taxi with no phone. I had to raw dog this taxi ride for 2.5 hours because he took the long way and got stuck in traffic. And it just came to me in a vision that I'm like, Circle the Sky seems kind of good. And there was like some goofy interaction that I asked like Skyhawk about, and he was like, yeah, it works that way. And I was like, oh, okay, this card's broken. So we all just started playing it. And then I was talking about it with Wirtz because PK Sparks really kind of wanted to play like an Earth control deck instead of like Earth Beat. And I'm like, yo, PK, because of this interaction, you could play like Earth Nexus control with like Clovey. And then Wirtz has the idea and he's like, oh, I could do that with Trifernal too. Like I could Circle the Sky onto something and then just summon a Trifernal. And he goes into like some locals and 4-0s it with Circle the Sky Trifernal. And he's like, yeah, I think this is kind of good. At some point we discussed like Helios's Chariot Ride because like we were talking about like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and it's like, oh, it's just Cold Wave. Like, oh, that card's crazy. And it kind of just went from there.
I will say it was about 4 weeks too long.
That seems to be the common consensus that I've been hearing from like everyone I talked to who's participated.
Yeah, I think it did go on a little bit long, but I enjoyed it. It was a cool way to spend a summer.
Speaking of things that have gone on too long,
I think that we had the better team for it.
Yeah, we've been on this intro for almost 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, it'll come out in post. It'll get down to about 2 or 3 minutes, right?
Thanks,
Yeah,
Joseph.
Yeah. As long as
They'll lose all the
all
lore.
it does
They'll
is
lose
get
all the
at me.
lore.
Don't leave me. I upload mostly 1.5 hour long podcast videos, so I'm not one to say what comes out in post.
Look, I'll just try to make it flow. That's all I try for.
On that note, do you guys want to talk about Daybreak?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to start off. The way I want to do this is we're each going to pick one card that if we had to label it as the most impactful card in the set, go ahead and choose that one card. I'm going to go first because I don't know the set in and out yet. So I want to have the easy pick, and that is Specter'S.
I'll just jump on it because like I think that Specter'S sucks. I think a lot of people are coping. I think that card's not good. I like Dense Fog though. Same idea, better card.
I think the thing with Specter'S is that we'll probably make it pop up on the screen so that I can give it more work to do and edit.
Don't worry.
Specter'S is a 1-cast lunar, is a 4/2, and it gets a +1 for every suppressed Elestral in the field. Common theme with lunar, you're going to see that a lot. They all suppress. And when it enters battle with an Elestral, you can suppress that Elestral to the end phase, meaning that it functionally, when it enters battle, it becomes a 5. So it is another 1-drop 5 guy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, to me personally, I feel like Specter'S is kind of like, he's not as snowbally as his Nexus form Viserys, but in my opinion, he is more situationally powerful than Viserys, into specifically the Frostfall meta. Because of his ability to suppress, it makes it to where things like Moss Station, Specter'S gets over Moss Station because its 6 drops down to a 4 and it itself goes up to a 5. In a lot of the situations of specifically the Frostfall meta, Specter'S actually does clear way more things than Viserys does. However, I don't necessarily think that makes it the absolute best card, because Daybreak's meta actually changes so much that while Specter'S is an incredible card, and I do downright think that it is going to be a staple of this upcoming meta, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be the best card in the set overall.
All right, well, that leads us into you. Go ahead and give us what you think it is.
Well, while I do actually agree with Trish that it is Dense Fog by far and away, I'm actually going to hold off on that and I'll let Trish talk Dense Fog. Instead, I am going to get up on my soapbox and teach you what the good Lord and Savior Argo has to teach all of us today.
Oh, man.
So, for those of y'all who are not aware, Argo, it is an Omni rune, so it can be cast with any 2 spirits. When an Elestral declares an attack, it lets you cast an artifact out of deck. Now, that might seem bad to most people, because artifacts so far have been historically the worst cards in Elestrals. Recently, like through playtesting, artifacts get significantly better if they are castable at quick speeds. Specifically, I believe it's Necklace of Harmonia is one that comes to mind, that it will boost your Elestral by 5 attack. And then the next turn, you can use the spirits that you use to cast that Necklace of Harmonia, and either, if you're playing a Nexus deck, get them off onto your other pieces, or just use them to cast something else. And I do think that realistically, that is something that is going to come up way more, because as I've been saying in a lot of testing, it kind of feels like it is a better version of Shield of Achilles in the long run, because it actually destroys the Elestral rather than just simply bouncing it.
Yeah, it's also like really flexible. I know a lot of people, of course, are playing it with Harmonia. The obvious use case is Poison Tunic because it's super expensive. It's 2 to cast Argo, and then whatever you cast is usually a 2 as well. Tunic is 4 total, but you're going to trade for an opponent's Elestral, which is 1, and on death, the opponent has to pay out 2. So you're just really paying net 1 spirit over your opponent for this little interaction. I know a lot of less interactive decks, I guess I'll say, are considering like Trident of Poseidon is really good. Bag of Winds, of course, needs no introduction. I think there's a lot of use cases for this card. And it is one of those cards that I think is really scary. The downside is that it sucks ass late. It's really rough to draw in a board state that you get into a lot in the Frostfall meta where like you both are on one guy and have kind of expended your back row. Here you are voluntarily putting yourself like down 5 spirits to get off a play, and that can be rough.
Absolutely.
I have
Trish,
thoughts.
Trish, do you want to lead us in on Dense Fog?
No, I would like to talk about Argo.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
think
you.
Argo also very bad. I think that card not very good. I think that is another kind of scrub bait card because it's minimum 4 cost. I've been testing with Argo a lot, and the problem with Argo is that the only good target for it in the entire game is Golden Fleece.
You think so?
Yeah,
Really?
I'll expand on that. You never want to cast Argo offensively. So Argo can only be triggered on attack declaration, which is something I didn't notice at first. I thought Argo was a lot better before I realized that, but it's only on attack declaration. So how attack declaration works in this game is like, let's say I have a dude, let's call it Boombat. Let's say I have Boombat because he's like a decent guy that people are playing that has like no stats. And I like attack with my Boombat. You could shield my Boombat, but it's a Boombat. You're not going to do that. So I cast Argo, right? I pay 2 spirits. Then I play Necklace. It goes up to a 7. I've played 4 spirits. At the end of that turn, Necklace is going to burn me 2 if you let it attack. So that's 6 spirits. But you can also still just say at resolution of the equip of Necklace, I'm going to shield the Boombat. And then you're down 5 spirits and a Boombat. So it's very bad offensively. You never want to cast that card offensively. The other thing too is that it makes your deck always feel bad into like spot removal, like Laurels and Earthquake. There's a lot of situations where you like set an Argo and you play a dude, and then they just Earthquake your dude, and then they attack you, and you're sitting there with Argo like, that kind of sucks. The big argument I've heard for Argo is that it sets up Nexus fodder. Which is like kind of true, but if you think about it, like all the good Nexus cards in the game right now aren't big stat sticks. Stuff like Kinleo is like a 3, right? So if you're Nexusing off of like a Necklace or something, you kill the Necklace.
If I may, that's kind of the point though, is that Necklace is meant to be used for a single combat, and then you move the spirits elsewhere. So
But okay. So let's use our brains for a second. If I run a Kinleo out in attack mode and set some cards, there's an Argo set. Like obviously there's an Argo set. So people aren't just gonna like blindly attack into that, like knowing that that's a possibility. And even if they do, it's not that big of a deal because you're burning your opponent for so many spirits just for them to resolve one play. Especially if you have something like Gorgon's Gaze, right? Like you attack into them, they burn themselves for like 5. You Kinleo, you pop your own Necklace. It becomes a little shitter again. And then because Nexus and trigger effects are split, you get Gorgon's Gazed, and you're sitting there with this like Kinleo that has like 3 spirits on it that does nothing, and then it just dies to anything the next turn. So that doesn't feel good. I think that Argo is best used defensively with something like Fleece for the same idea of like setting up Nexus banks, but because you can put, like, say you have any dude that has like a decent defense line, like 3 or higher, Fleece makes it a 5 or higher, which makes it really hard to kill. even if it would kill it, the fleece protects it, which means that you can like force a dude to live, and if the fleece lives, then you get Nexus fodder because there's no main phase 2.
I will say that I think Fleece actually is a very interesting card that I do want us to talk about more into like the just things to keep an eye out for in Daybreak, just because Fleece I think is one of those cards that has extremely interesting applications, especially with Cypromal. But again, I think we're going to get more into that a little bit later.
I also think that one of the applications of Argo that wasn't really touched on there was Poison Tunic specifically.
Poison Tunic specifically is probably the best target for like if you're wanting to specifically take things in combat. But of course, the first deck profile we showcased on the channel was my Waspivy deck that I have been working on with it, and I will say that Poison Tunic for that deck specifically has really made it actually really competent in that regard, namely in that it Poison Tunic is no longer just a attack drop and a burn tool. It then also represents an Elestral that is going to be immune to almost everything under the sun, and you have to be able to answer it right away. I think that's more in the niche camp. That's more like specific use cases for specific decks. I do think that Argo, though, has a lot of application in multiple decks.
Now, do we want to talk about Dense Fog?
I think Dense Fog is also why of Argo bad, because it's more copies of the like, ooh, I'm going to Nexus, and then they chain the Dense Fog, and then you just burned yourself for a bunch and then popped your equipment just to lose.
Dense Fog, do we feel like this card is like really good? I am still kind of... I really don't understand how this card works.
Okay, so Dense Fog has a lot of broad applications, but also very specific weirdness that Gorgons doesn't have. A lot of people are kind of looking at it as a mass Gorgon's Gaze for the board, but in reality, it's not that. Specifically because it just says to suppress the Elestral. What's interesting about that is you cannot chain it to an effect being used because that effect is already at that point in play. So suppressing an Elestral that's already used its effect does not negate the effect. That's why Gorgon's Gaze specifically says it suppresses it and negates its effects, but it does prevent effects or any applications of it from being used for the rest of the turn.
I think that that's a half truth. You're right in like how that works. But Dense Fog actually is probably one of the strongest cards against the Nexus mechanic, because everything that has like a Nexus and then effect, those are two separate effects. So if they go effect to Nexus and you chain Dense Fog, the second effect is not triggered. Like it's suppressed. True. Dense Fog becomes exceptionally good because I think something that we've seen consistently in like the short time this game has been alive is that any deck that like can Nexus is favored over a deck that cannot Nexus. Dense Fog is a really strong tool to kind of turn it into like a caveman kind of game. And the big downside to a lot of like Nexus type decks is they're not big stat sticks. You can kind of just turn skip people by like, I think the best example of this is versus Solar, because Solar, a lot of people are like doomering on Solar. Like first it was doomering that Solar is broken, then doomering that Solar is terrible. I think that Solar is just solid, like, overall as a deck. But Dense Fog is a huge problem for that deck. So I think the real reason, if anything, that Solar doesn't perform is that with a 15-card side deck, everyone has space for 3 Dense Fogs somewhere in their list, and Dense Fog is a huge issue for that deck. Unlike Specteris, your opponent can't see the Dense Fog coming. So let's say they play like a Moss Station and they attack into a dude that you have, right? And they expect to be bigger because they have 6 stat. You can go Battle Step Dense Fog and just let them die for free. But they're never going to like swing a Moss Station into a Specteris.
I was going to say, as a result of not only the popularity of Dense Fog, but the popularity of Specteris, you're going to see a lot of those Elestrals gone forever. Cards like Moss Station are just so much easier to blow out now that we have like multiple combat tricks.
Yeah, I do think we're going to see the rise of Elestrals that have the number 5 actually printed on them.
Big day for Necruff. Huge day for Necruff.
I'd say huge day for Sorlet, and again, we will get into that later.
I don't know about Sorlet.
You want to know what would actually be insane as a meta development that we could see, like theoretically? Yeah. Let's imagine a world where like 5s is the best deck. Like
not a hard one.
I'm imagining
pure 5, like no crabs. Yeah. Like pure crab. And we're in the future, we're in like set 4, and like Lunar itself is a real deck. And you're playing like vanilla beater 5s. And you show them that you're not running crabs. So they side out their Dense Fogs, and in response you side in crabs.
Ooh.
That would be hilarious. That would be awesome.
That's a cool development, but unfortunately won't happen as the crabs are independently so terrible.
Yeah. that would be a very cool development to see, though.
Yeah, Joseph, you want to give us a card that you want to talk about specifically?
Yeah, can we talk about the best card in the set? I'm talking about Eddie, my boy Edward.
I was hoping that you were going to bring Edward up.
Edward's so insane. I think he is legitimately like a top 3 card in the set. This little effect at the end obviously is almost never going to trigger. I think that there are some people, groups of individuals still preaching the doctrine of Wexus who believe that playing a couple of copies of Rock on a Hard Place can get you in a position to get a really early Kuribus. That's fine, not my style, but it is what it is. As a mechanism to out guys is just so incredible. What we see a lot, especially with the development of 5s, is that a lot of Elestrals have one really crazy stat, but very few have 2. In fact, I really can't think of any Elestral that always beats Eddie. No 1-drops clear this guy. He works on cast, which means if you have something like, frequently you're going to be in a position where, like, let's say you have an Astrabbit and a Gorgon set and your opponent has an Elestral that you haven't answered, they go for an Eddie, you have to Gorgons the Eddie on cast because otherwise he does get the effect and they can trade otherwise. It puts you in the super suboptimal way to play against the card. There's not a lot still in the metagame that clears an Astrabbit. This is, of course, a mechanism to do that. All of the counter runes that are currently super popular do not play around this card well at all. It's a water Elestral, so Tsunami doesn't really work. Shielding this feels like the worst thing in the world because it threatens removal every single time it comes down. Gorgons is, like, cool as an attack stopper, but you're getting this 6 spirit differential after you've already put your opponent in a weird position by triggering the effect to switch it to attack, and any additional Elestral really cooks them. PTA is just super telegraphed. The other really fun thing that this card does is, I don't know how popular it's going to be because I expect Specteris to be very popular, regardless of if it's good or not, is it means Foamy becomes absolutely bonkers. Foamy now being destroyed in battle means that you can summon Eddie in defense, trigger its effect targeting itself, and get in. Or you can use Eddie as, like, the greatest blocker in the history of time. I think this card is really cool. I think it's got a lot of potential. I'm playing a bunch of lists that include him, and in those lists, he is far and away my favorite card to see.
He definitely is, I think, the strongest water card we received in this particular set, by far and away. It is. I do
Pretty low bar.
Yeah, I know. It's a very low bar. Water, quite frankly, didn't get a whole lot good in this. But Eddie definitely, I think, is one of those cards that actually should see splash play in some decks, especially decks that are already teching the waters for Tsunami specifically. You're probably going to be seeing Eddie a lot, like you said. But to kind of play into that, I know I'm kind of jumping back on this, but I think the only back row that does actually actively play into Eddie really well, ironically, is Argo.
If you want to take 5 on an Eddie attack, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. That is the one situation with Argo. So I think probably the best way to play Argo, if you're going to play it, is like 3 Argo and then 1 Harmonia, 1 Golden Fleece. Because then if they swing the defender, you have the Fleece. And if they Eddie you specifically, you have Harmonia. But again, it's just so expensive. It just doesn't feel worth it most of the time.
Sorry to jump back on that.
Oh, you're so good. That's a great segue because I didn't want to be the guy to be like Hilly every single time. But maybe that's my identity. Maybe I should just be that guy now.
Is Eddie good enough to just be generically splashed into a lot of different decks? I know we're seeing that with Specteris a lot, more than just 5s.
I stand by that, yes. Like I was saying, a lot of decks are already going to be playing waters specifically for Tsunami. I think upping that water count just a little bit to add in Eddies as well, as a way to answer, like y'all said, the omnipresence that is Astrabbit. I do think that is something we are probably going to see more of in the coming months as Daybreak develops, is both Specteris and Eddie finding homes in a lot of different decks.
Also, with the side deck being up to 15, again, this is a card that we'll see, even if you're not maining it, you're guaranteed going to be siding 3 Eddie, because if nothing else, he single-handedly clears the 5s matchup, right?
I don't know about 3, but at least 2 for sure.
I was gonna say I don't think it's 3, but I think it'll probably occupy a similar space to what Boombat is currently occupying in the side deck. It definitely has a place in the metagame for sure.
I do want to transition us now going forward. Some other things in Daybreak that are of note and of interest. I'll rattle them off and you guys can just kind of go ahead and give input as I go. Notably, just like we got Lavalith and Vertilith in Frostfall, we're getting a bunch of liths in this set. So we are getting the Solar Lith, which is Heliolith. We have Water, which is Coastalith. We have Electric, or Thunder, which is Arcolith.
If I can just go ahead and take the mic on this a little bit, I'll just go ahead and beat everyone else to it. Coastalith is the worst out of all of these.
I'm a Coastalith truther.
Coastalith, my goat. Coastalith, best card in the set, baby. Best card right there. Coastalith.
I am sorry. Coastalith, just of the 3 liths that we are seeing from the set, I do think that Coastalith is probably the one that's going to see the least amount of play. While its cast condition is probably pretty reliable because of Astrabit being in the format, I don't think that its actual cast effect of being able to special cast a 1 spirit water from hand is necessarily going to be the best. Even with Eddie being in that obvious pool, namely because you have to already have the water in hand. A lot of the times there, when you want to be able to special cast waters, you're wanting to do it with something like Foamy, where you can grab it straight out of your deck. Coastalith is just too situational, in my opinion, to see relevant play. The other two, though, of Arcolith and Heliolith, I do think both have very strong applications in the format.
Coastalith lets you normal cast it when your opponent has 2 Elestrals in defense. Arcolith is the opposite. It lets you normal cast it when your opponent has 2 Elestrals in attack. Cast with Arcolith, you can enchant up to 3 Thunders from your underworld to your field. This has obviously incredible synergy within the Thunder strategy already, as it gives you more options of places to put cards. You can use it to re-enchant an Astrabit. It gives you things to move around for Nexusing. I don't know that Thunder Nexus is necessarily a dedicated strategy anymore with Sparkit gone, but to the best
I
of
think
ability.
it may be.
Are you thinking about the same deck list that I saw, Joseph?
I don't know which one you saw.
The Argo one?
Yes, yeah.
That deck's terrible. I'll just tell you
so?
right now. I tested
that's
a
rough.
lot of it. I tested a lot of it because I was really excited about it. That deck sucks. It's so bad.
Is there something to the Larvacell, Anacell, Phosphocell stuff with the addition of, maybe even with the addition of Arcolith into the Thunder Nexus strategy, maybe splashing with Solar?
Maybe.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I didn't test it a ton, but I did try a little bit of Larvacell as the Sparkit slot in a Thunder Nexus build, and boy, it's just not good. It's just really not remotely strong.
I'm going to second Joseph on this one. I've also done some Larvacell, Phosphocell testing, and Phosphocell feels so awful. I'm sorry. It's
The second stage Evo. It's like
Anacell.
Anacell. That's the funniest card they've ever printed. I can't believe they were yeah, give it nothing. Fuck you.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is you are having to basically commit, what is it, 6?
7. It's 7.
Is it
yeah.
7? Yeah, it's you have to commit 7 spirits into this line that has no built-in protection. There's nothing keeping this Phosphocell alive. And even its stat, while yes, it will have at minimum 8 on its attack, 8 attack on a 3-drop feels awful, especially for the amount of investment that you're putting in, whereas you could put a much lower investment cost than the 7 into even something like Waspivy, which also gets
I knew
you
you were
to
going to
8.
say Waspivy.
Yeah, it's an apt comparison here because Waspivy also goes to 8, but Waspivy also has the built-in protection against counter runes. Even though they both die to Earthquake, Phosphocell also dies to every counter rune under the sun. You don't feel too bad committing 4 spirits to a shield when your opponent just committed 7 spirits to that thing.
There's something to be said for, it doesn't matter quite how broken they get. The 2 and the 3 casts still just don't hold up.
Here's what I would say. I think that Phosphocell and whatever the middle one is are probably bait. Larvacell might be good, because I think that's one of the first cards that we've gotten that can Nexus multiple different colors.
There's definitely a situation where that multiple color Nexusing matters. It just will take a different form than existing Thunder Nexus builds.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a deck like what people... you couldn't just copy-paste a deck list, throw Larvacell in there, and say, oh, my deck is better now.
Right.
You would have to completely rebuild, but I do think that Thunder has one of the best receivers in the game, being Astrabit. Solar has the next best
2 receivers in Corvishine and Lestragon. So there's maybe a world where that card could see play just as like something to nexus stuff around the board, but there's just better cards probably.
I will say we've kind of danced around it a little bit, but I think we need to address the elephant in the room, that is the hype that we felt on Arcalith's reveal between then and now. Because when they were revealing the liths for this set, I know there were, myself included, there were multiple people who were saying Arcalith is by far and away the best lith that they are showing here because of specifically Spark It and Astrap It. But now with Spark It out of the meta, it kind of feels like Arcalith has been the deck that it was meant to like bolster up and actually make like even stronger, has now been effectively declawed.
Yeah, but I don't think that should take away from the concept of Arcalith as a card still being something that could really forward the strategy in the future, maybe even once we get the Spark It return from Tartarus.
Yeah, I do think that there are some applications there, but again, that is like 2 sets away. Like there's going to be a lot of meta development between now and then, and who knows?
If nothing else, it's something that should be kept in the back of your mind going forward. But
There could be a home for this card, yeah.
Yeah, potentially.
I do also want to talk about Heliolith. Heliolith is going to be the solar lith, obviously, and you can cast it, normal cast it when there is an artifact enchanted, and then when you cast it, you can turn an Elestral on the field to the owner's hand. So it could potentially really net you some advantage here.
I've tested a lot of Heliolith. I think it's very thematic. So if you don't know, all the liths, all their stats always add up to 10. Heliolith is a 5/5. So like that, it's middle of the road in its stats. It is also mid as a lith.
But it also outs Eddie.
It outs
The only card that outs Eddie.
Yeah, it does beat Eddie. Eddie can't deal with it. It also outs stuff like Chronodile, which is cool. So like if your opponent sets up a big Chronodile, it is a non-targeting bounce, so it can clear stuff like that.
I do think that that's kind of a huge thing on Heliolith specifically, is the fact that its bounce is non-targeting. I do think with a lot of testing being seen around, like, for lack of a better term, towers, Elestrals, I do think that that is something that actually holds huge promise with Heliolith specifically.
That is the one thing it has going for it, is that it's a type of removal that is hard to come by. And, you know, there's a lot of those, like, kind of big boss monster Elestrals that are hard to remove in Elestrals. That's kind of like the bar for a 3-drop to be played, is that it needs to be impossible to deal with. The problem with Heliolith is, I think, the same problems I had with Argo. It's hard to get Heliolith out without just ascending over a solar. I'll have like an Argo set and like a rabbit or something, you know, on my board, and I'm like, all right, this is great. They're gonna attack into my dude. I'm gonna Argo them, equip my thing, and then I play Heliolith. I bounce their dude, and I get this huge tempo swing. And then I'm like down 7 or 8 spirits by like turn 2 if it works, and half the time they just like EQ me, and then they swing at my face for 1, and I'm sitting with a Heliolith in my hand all game. I think Heliolith is maybe a side deck card, though. Like, I think that there is, like, room for it. Like, maybe if you're playing Solar, or maybe if you're playing, like, an equipment-heavy deck, you could side, like, 2 of it now that we have the 15-card side decks, just in case you run into stuff like Chronodile that can just, like, scam you. But as a card, it just feels, like, super mid.
We've been dancing around it all episode. Do we want to give a quick thoughts on the Solar attribute, solar type,
Busted.
The solar element.
Busted.
element?
I hate to put you on here twice, but I think you're the one who's played it the most, Trish, right?
Oh, you're good. I love yapping. Solar is good, in my opinion. I think people are just trying to get too cute with it. The deck, from my testing, plays very similarly to how Thunder Nexus played, where you just have a bunch of really good cards that all say, like, Receive or Nexus on them. So your deck just does more than other decks. Like, you're doing something other than just like, I play a guy. The number on this card is bigger than your number. I attack. Oh, you had shield? Uh-oh. I lose. So the deck has slightly more brain cells to it than that, which is always a good thing, I think, in this game. But it does have its problems. Like, Dense Fog is a huge issue for that deck. Stuff like Earthquake, stuff like Laurels are problems. Lavalith completely destroys that deck if they ever leave up an Apollo. Celestio is not the god card that everybody thought it was. It is less consistent than doing something like playing Lestragon or just playing a different Solar guy. I do think that Solar plays Celestio for sure. I just don't think it's like the god card that like everyone thought it was. It's not like a Doomer card. It's still an S+ tier card, but it's not the end of days as we know it.
But it has to resolve, and it has to
no, it doesn't even have to resolve realistically. Like I've played games against Solar where like they just summon it and it's still a 13/10 with 3 spirits under it. I think the bigger problem is that if Solar gets to the point where they can play Celestio, you lost that game far before that card hit the field. And I think the thing with Solar is that Solar is a product, it's going to be format warping, I think, because it's going to dictate how people build their decks and how people play, but I don't think it is going to be like taking over top cuts. I think it's just the deck that like forces people to say like, hey, maybe I need to still main deck Lavalith. Hey, maybe I need to like side 3 Laurels. Hey, maybe I should play this. Like stuff like that.
I will say, like, kind of looking over the Solar pool, there is one card in particular that has jumped out to me in like trying to build to where I haven't really found a full home for it yet. But I think it actually kind of comes back to something you were saying previously on Golden Fleece, and that is Cypromal. I do think that Cypromal actually might have a place in the meta, not in Solar, but specifically in Nexus decks, because it specifically states that Golden Fleece can be cast with spirits out of your underworld. That does not specifically say Solar, so that does mean that you could use Cypromal to bring out a Fleece and bring spirits out of your discard as a Nexus bank to use. In that regard, I feel like it is a little bit better than just using a Divine as a large Nexus bank, because it does specifically recur the spirits to use it and doesn't take your life total down any further.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is the best use for it. I haven't really liked Cypromal in my testing though, specifically because it eats your normal cast, and sometimes that can be really awkward. Like it's very slow, I think, is the bottom line, and it also can't cast from hand. So if you draw the Golden Fleece, the card does nothing. So that's awkward, which means you have to play multiple of it. I do think it's an interesting card though. Like I think like one of the best starts in the game right now potentially is like turn 1 Nectar, draw 2 cards, play Cypromal, equip Golden Fleece, and then set some back row, and then next turn you play Heliolith. That's broken. Like if you can pull that off, like that's crazy. Like that's one of the best starts you can possibly hope for.
And I do think that actually is more realistic, specifically in a deck like Solar, because the Golden Fleece is going to protect the Cypromal for a turn. So even if you don't have the Golden Fleece still out to special cast Heliolith the next turn, you do have the Cypromal that you can then ascend over.
Exactly.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Not to cut in, but we do have to move things along. So I do want to.
Can we talk about Cypromal for 2 hours?
This guy promo roundtable.
We gotta bring it down.
Joseph, thoughts on Cypromal? Everyone thoughts on
cool.
Cypromal.
It's a great card. It's interesting. There's nothing else I really want to do in Solar.
Couple of quick cards to hit on here. I do want to hit on Ash Rabbit.
Mid.
It is certainly mid. I do love it though. When you find it in the end game, you immediately win the game. It's like really sick. But it is so bad to draw early. It's just like whack ass Tratagua. It's one of those cards that like if Fire Nexus was a good deck, this would be a cool card. And it isn't. And so people are like trying it in 5s because there's only 3 good 5s.
The deck actually I've been testing it in, and I do not think that I am anywhere near making this deck work properly, is Eruption Control, but not for recycling the eruptions, but instead for cycling, shout out to Wirtz, the fruit package. Because
you people gotta stop talking to Wirtz.
Well, because Ash Rabbit can get you back pretty solidly guaranteed a copy of Ambrosia because of how the fruit package kind of works. You will turbo through usually
Step 1, draw 6 Ambrosia. Step 2.
Step 2, do anything.
You don't need to hit 3 Ambrosia with that. You don't need to hit 6 Ambrosia. You need to hit 3, and 3 is a lot more realistic to hit in that regard. And then Ash Rabbit just cycles them back. I think that actually has some potential, but like I said, I have not gotten anywhere near close enough to calling anything of that good yet. But I do see that there is potential there.
Notably, and the most notable thing about that no one can stop me from playing fruit. Nobody can stop me, and I won't be stopped unless it's
I'll
bad,
stop
which
you.
it is. In which case, I'll stop. But
I'll stop. Whoa, no, don't swear on my legend words. Come on now.
I do have a couple more cards I want to hit on. We do have a new Morfrost Bat. Does this do enough to make Morfrost good, or is it still
Bad
too
form.
fast and loose with the spirits?
It is funny that they named it Morfrost Bad Form. It is hilarious. I don't know. What are they doing now? They're golden applesing Bat turn 1. Cool.
Oh, who cares? Who the fuck cares? It's Morfrost.
It's crazy that we were doomering on this deck when it first came out, and it turns out that it just uses too much spirits too fast. It just burns through all of your life.
And if you are playing Spectaris anywhere, you win the game immediately on cast.
I think this is a reoccurring theme that's emerging with Elestrals with the resource system. The resource system kind of constricts any deck from doing anything like too intricate, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, it prevents things from being too combo heavy unless you're Josh.
unless you're Josh, yeah, exactly. Unless you're Josh, it's very hard to like do anything too intense because you just burn through spirits so fast, and like there's so many punishes. And now that they're printing stuff like Dense Fog too, the game is like heavily being pushed in a direction where like just playing a good stat stick every turn is almost an optimal strategy that feels very difficult to lose with.
Yeah, and so much of that is just based off of dude, shield sucks. That card is just so bad.
But
when
you
you
have
think
to
about
play
an
it,
entire meta
unfortunately.
that is completely developed around the concept of dropping a big ass one guy and just letting him go, like, what are you gonna do? Shield it back to my hand? I'm just gonna cast it again. You're just gonna pay 2 for me to do it again next turn? Okay.
But I think that's what makes shield so good is
Yeah.
like okay, I play a dude, right, that has a big stat line. You play a dude with a big stat line. You attempt to trade, I say no. Next turn I play another dude with a big stat line, and then I get to swing at you. And now you still have to out the one from the initial turn. And then you have to out another one, and then I shield you again. And now the game is lost.
Yeah, when you have every guy and multiple shields, I'm sure it's wonderful. But I'm just saying, if you're in a situation where you have to,
But that happens so often. Is the thing is like that's the thing is that's just not an unrealistic scenario.
I would think I would rather just like use a tsunami to flip its defense and kill it on my turn. I don't know.
But that's the same thing. That's the same thing as shield, I guess.
I don't know. I think just I don't know, something about playing the cost plus one just to have them drop it again next turn. I feel like you're not actually solving the issue. You're just delaying it. That's just me. I'm also not good at card games. I just like talking about them. So I do. Speaking of talking about them, let's talk about Toxiswarm.
Oh, please let me yap. Please let me yap. Toxiswarm, I think, is one of my favorite Elestrals in this entire set. And it's entirely because it seems really unassuming, but in reality is actually probably one of the most potent, like chip down threats that you can be playing right now. The fact that every time it receives a wind, burns the opponent for 1, so that means it's coming down and it is immediately getting going even with its value, because you're taking a spirit out of your opponent's spirit deck at that stage. At the same time, it is a 4/1, so the 4 is actually pretty high statted for wind specifically. Like going through like a lot of their Elestral lines, I think the only Elestral that like one drop Elestral that has any kind of comparison with Toxiswarm is specifically that of Sorlet. You can make an argument for Galaxair, but it still dies to suppression, whereas Toxiswarm doesn't in that regard. And then if Toxiswarm sticks, so let's say you get through the turn through Shield or Alter or any of the number of things. Alter actually makes it even better. But if you get through the turn with any number of things, Wind getting off a Nexus to Toxoswarm can basically snowball the game completely out of control. And I actually do think that Wind Nexus is probably one of the decks to watch in these early meta stages, because it's going to make it to where people cannot play slower decks consistently. Toxoswarm puts way too much pressure onto the board to play it slow. And it's because it plays it on that different axis of burn.
Speaking of burn, last card I want to touch on here is Vesuvatuga.
Funny.
Unplayable.
Worth building a deck around it to burn your opponent with it. No,
Definitely not.
no. Okay.
I've played into a couple of people playing Vesuvatuga recently, and it is, while yes, if Vesuvatuga hits the board, it is a very impressive burnout. The problem is Vesuvatuga hitting the board.
The scarier eruption deck is Gavakol, where you just play like Ash Rabbit on turn 1, and it's like, oh, well, that does nothing. Wow, you suck. And then on turn 2, they just play Scavacol, which is still a 5, and then it just searches 2 eruptions, and it's like, okay, well, your turn. You're at 14 now.
Right.
And then they can just play the Boltugas in that deck to just get them back from graveyard and just like fetch them whenever they want them. So you can just like aggro burn your opponent. That deck seems a little bit scary, but even then, it just feels too slow.
Is there anything else that we want to touch on or discuss on in Daybreak specifically? We didn't touch on Chronodile, but I feel like that's more of like a starter deck.
Yeah, it just feels kind of like Water and Water Nexus, and like the decks that are looking to cast the like super good suite of Water Elestrals are in a good place going into Daybreak, but lack some sort of game plan. And I feel like Chronodile's like an easy slot in that I don't know if it will survive like a couple of weeks of thorough testing. Like at present, I am trying out the deck. I think it feels really fine, but the parts of it that feel really fine are like these same old Water Nexus cards. Chronodile just sort of feels tacked on because like it needs something that gets over the top.
To kind of add on to that, Chronodile does get over the top very effectively, but in my personal testing here, Chronodile, even once it hits the board, it cannot really attack into back row, because Shield is probably one of the most threatening back row for like actually heavily investing into a Chronodile, because Shield doesn't target. It actually just bounces the Chronodile back to hand if it attacks in, and all of the other major counter runes have to target it, whereas it feels bad because Water Nexus is already kind of playing a stall out game plan, and once Chronodile hits the board, it kind of exacerbates that until you actually can chew through their back row with its pop.
Can I expand on that point? Not related to Chronodile, but related to the other card I want to bring up is Ferrogeist. Ferrogeist has a sneaky little, like, everybody knows Ferrogeist is like the burn guy, like you sit on it and you burn your opponent to death. I don't think that's what Ferrogeist is at all. Ferrogeist is the most offensive 3-drop we've ever seen in our life, because it has this sneaky little line of text on it that says, this card cannot be returned to the hand.
The anti-shield clause.
Yeah, like it has an anti-shield Heliolith clause, so if you stick like a Golden Fleece on that card, it's sticking, and it is doing 3 spirit damage. Like, you would have to pay 6 spirits to like double Earthquake it to kill it.
The other option, but it's even worse, is 8 spirits to go shield chain Gorgons, and it just feels awful.
It, like, if you Gorgon's Gaze it, sure, you can spend 3 spirits to stop me from attacking you. It is a very scary card that we don't have an efficient way to get on the board right now, but when we do, that card is terrifying.
If I may interject one that I actually do think kind of needs to be touched on, and I am going to give full credit here to Swolax and the Elestronauts for bringing this to my attention.
Whoa. We don't mention those 4 here. Come on now.
I love Swolax.
But
Swolax
very specifically, it is Mudlet and Bloom. Those two actually kind of do make me think that Earth Nexus might be able to make a little bit of a resurgence, because with Mudlet specifically, you are effectively giving Earth Nexus 3 additional copies of Altar of Stars. And that seems actually like it might have some real potential, especially with Moss Station, because of being able to Nexus the Earth to it and then re-enchant onto the Mudlet to change it back to attack in response to something attacking the defense position Moss Station, which then makes Moss Station an 8 that also will deal damage because it's at 2 spirits. Again, though, the problem with it is that it dies to Dense Fog, but I do think that the fact that Earth Nexus does, in a way, have access to 3 more copies of Altar of Stars should not be overlooked.
Do you know that Mudlet's just better, Eddie?
It's got 3 defense. It plays around Eddie more effectively than Eddie.
And you can imagine an Eddie that every turn can Eddie again.
You alter, you can switch them, then switch them back. How crazy is that?
God, I love it. Oh, you can bloom and switch 2 things to defense. It's like a really expensive.
Then you can
tsunami.
cast Coastalith. Holy shit!
We've solved the format. It's so over. We've solved.
Wait,
the format.
Mudlet is actually
I'm playing
crazy.
Mudlet Bloom Coastalith at the next event. That's happening. Mark my words.
Wait, are we memeing or is Mudlet actually really good? Because if it
No,
Mudlet
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 is not
actually
bad. Mudlet is not bad.
Yeah, Mudlet
Okay,
actually
yeah,
does.
Mudlet-
Mudlet is a
actually
good card.
thinking
Like
this is really
Mudlet's
good.
actually broken. Like this card's actually broken.
why are we talking about this card being as good as Eddie?
Because Eddie has 4 attack and Mudlet only has 3. That 4 actually that 4 clears significantly more in the combat. But Eddie is better generically, but Mudlet in Earth Nexus specifically has some very seriously powerful applications.
Mudlet has the good word on it, which is receive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That really is the end of the
Here,
all of it.
I think this is the quick and dirty way to evaluate cards in this game. If they say the word Nexus or receive on it, it's immediately S tier.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like if it says those keywords,
least
like
has
that
the
card's
potential to be.
broken immediately. Like don't even think. Turn your brain off. That card's good. I know what you're gonna
Kuribis
say.
and Rock and
Never
Hard
mind.
Place.
Never mind.
No.
Kuribis is it's another one of those weird water cards that like something's got to be good in water, man. These cards are too good to not be good. But Rock and Hard Place is so overhyped. I can't believe there's people talking about how good this card is. Like, yeah, give your opponent agency. Great idea. Like, I struggle to think of very few cards that give your opponent a choice that end up in the good pile. I do like that some people are playing it just as like 2 spirit special cast to Kuribis because you're already playing Eddie. Still think it's not worth.
If
right.
I may interject on the Kuribis, I do think Kuribis has some applications purely as an Ascend target that goes over your higher defense or very sticky waters. That 9 attack in my testing
It's huge.
that actually is a massive stat there because a lot of the
It's over
costs-
Waspivy.
Actually, it gets over Waspivy. It gets over Vertilith, who's actually been coming up more and more.
That's a big deal.
9.
It gets
I think,
over
is-
Necklace of Harmonia bullshit too.
Yeah,
most of the time.
to where I don't even think while its effect is decent, I don't think that it's going to go off too often because it effectively requires you to Nexus multiple spirits onto it just to be able to actually get it off. For maybe you're going to get some of those back, but it's not like I will say its effect is extremely hit or miss in testing, but the 9 stat line on a water Elestral is actually way bigger than I think people are giving it credit for.
The last thing here, and then we're going to wrap up. Which starter deck is better, Chronodile or Farrageist?
Farrageist. Can
Farrageist
I talk about
has,
the broken cards?
For staple purposes, Farrageist. For getting a player started in the game, Chronodile.
It's Farrageist. Farrageist broken. It gives you Farrageist. That card's
All right.
good.
What is, I just want to hear, sound off, your favorite non-full art, non-stellar art from the set minus Farrageist?
Farrageist.
Eddie?
It's Eddie.
It's Eddie.
He's such
Come on,
an
dude,
adorable
Eddie.
little guy.
Favorite full art?
I like the PTA where it's Equilinx like gonna kill you. That's funny.
Is that
I like
Harper?
Celestio. Celestio cool.
Definitely PTA is my favorite, but just because I don't want to say the same thing as Joseph, I'm actually going to go with the Chronodile full art because it just looks so clean.
The Chronodile
I'm gonna
tablet
say
looks like
Apollo.
absolute shit.
Oh no,
I'm glad
not
he has a
talking
good
the tab-
printing.
I'm not talking.
I know.
about
I'm
the
glad he has
tablet.
a good printing. He's like,
Bro, like I know what they were trying to do with like the tablet cards. I was not a fan of those. I was
so hyped, and I got it in the mail. I was like, "Fuck, I can't read this. I don't know what it says."
Yeah.
My favorite full art is Apollo, Trish.
Oh, Celestia.
Apollo's
That
so
card's crazy.
nice.
Apollo's awesome.
Celestia is so pretty.
A card that we didn't touch on at all. And then let me get your favorite Stellar.
Specteris.
Eddie.
No, it's not even close.
Eddie.
Oh wait.
Eddie.
Oh wait. No, actually,
Cum
no,
Eddie.
Eddie. I forgot
Yeah,
about Cum Eddie.
he's just
I
a
forgot about
fucking
Cum.
sperm, dude. It's great.
I'm looking
I'm
at.
so
my friend
happy they
pulled
made
one,
this card.
and I was so mad that he sold it. Like he pulled one, and I tried to get it from him. He sold it so fast.
Was it the
I would
63
so-
one?
Maybe I don't know.
There was a guy in the Discord server that was like, I need exactly number 63. If anybody pulls 63, I'll pay well over Stellar price for it. Because it had some personal meaning to him. And it was the first one pulled.
If someone can find the 69 Cum Eddie, I will pay you 1,000 American dollars for that card.
And he's not joking. I think he would.
No,
Yeah, for sure.
I do think that Joseph actually probably would.
Interestingly enough,
it is illegible because it is impossible to read with the new how they're numbering them.
yeah, I think my favorite Stellar, if I'm not going to pick Eddie, although Eddie is the funniest, maybe Smoltuga.
Yeah, the
that's
Smoltuga is cute.
Actually, it's Larvacell. It's for sure Larvacell, actually. The more I look at Larvacell, the more I like it.
I just got rid of mine.
Yeah.
Mr. A Drive stole that from me like immediately.
Hi, Dan. And
Hello, Daniel A Drive. Thank you for stealing my Larvacell. I'm sorry to the dude that I told who could get it from me, and then I said sorry. I have to scam you.
Yeah,
It's okay,
well,
you have an
it's okay
Exaltus
because
coming
you
in
got
the mail,
Dan's
Trish.
word.
That is true. I need 2 more Exaltus.
Uh,
I need 2 more Exaltus, 2 more First Light, like 1 or 2 P-Gleam, and 3 Corvishine. Please inquire my DMs at TrishulaTTV on Discord. Thank you. I have dollars.
very true and real.
Also, maybe Pluckies.
Does anybody want to comment on the quality of card stock increase? I know that was a big concern for a
It's
lot of people.
awesome.
It's so good.
Incredible.
It's so much better.
God.
Hey,
I don't know how, but people can like collectively gaslit themselves that the card quality like was better after the Kickstarters. That was so not real. Like the Kickstarter card quality, awesome.
Yeah.
Base set like First Ed and Frostfall, the cards just felt like they were washed out.
Listen, I got a stack of Kickstarters on my desk, and not a single one of these is warped. I have Frostfall and base set commons on my desk that are warped. Okay, so I'm glad that
Daybreak, no complaints. Feels great.
Yeah. Daybreak.
Good.
Awesome. Love
One
it.
day I'll get some Daybreak cards and I'll comment on it too.
I will say I went from opening Daybreak cards on stream to sleeving up a bunch of hollows to fill out my Frostfall binder, and my gosh, the quality is very discernible. Like the difference is very, very discernible.
All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap it up for our first ever Caster's Cast.
I thought it was Caster's Corner.
That's the name of the channel.
Caster's
Can we
ass.
please name this? Can we please name the
Caster
show
Blaster.
Expend a Draw?
Yeah, sure. Can
I liked that.
Can I talk about some of the other cards in the set? Can I like rapid fire them?
Yeah, go,
Like,
go, Trish.
I tried to do that. And ended up on a 10-minute
Fungi and Bronto Wisp. Maybe good, but kind of troll. Humber's Troll. Don't play that card. Let's see. Verituka, maybe. Javel Toucan, maybe. Rhinosect, actually, maybe. That card's kind of cool.
Not terrible. Not terrible.
Like,
Brumalinx?
actually better than you would think.
Brumalinx is
Brumalinx,
trash.
awful, yeah. Guardian of the Fleece. If I see this card in your deck, I will steal your door hinges. Do not play this card. Mudslide, dog shit. Do not play.
Wait,
Don't
Apollo.
Poke at the Bear should have been Bloodlust. They fumbled it. What else? What else is there?
You're gonna look like a moron when Bears gets broken.
Oh my god, I'm gonna look so stupid. Apollo. Apollo, worse than you would expect. Not necessary. I was like even testing without that card. It's kind of mid.
That's my twink. Cryoblast.
Good, very good card. You don't play it in Frost though. Soul Bell, Soul Stocks, dog shit. Don't play it. Ruminous, dog shit. Don't
All
play
of the
it.
wisps.
Follow the Wisps, maybe. The Firm, maybe. Better than you would think. Pheromel, dog shit. Calfmel, maybe good. Pharaohgeist, best card ever printed. P-Gleam, kind of good. Follow Pharaohs, decent side deck card. Nebuleo, mandatory in the side deck. Glimbat, overtuned. This card definitely should not have more than one line of text on it. Good card. Novacore, bad card. Lustragon, good card. Sundial line, terrible. Dratara, good card. Also, why are the Hollow Spirits not the new arts? Why are they the original arts? Dan, please respond. What the fuck?
Because we need to completely kill Kickstarter stocks.
True.
It should have been in tournament pack. That's all I'm saying. It just should have been in tournament pack. When do we get the new arts in Hollow? Because all I'm saying is that I really like the Terratlas art, like the new Terratlas art and the new like Owloon art, and there's not Hollow and the new Zaptor art. Actually, I like a lot of the new arts. They're pretty banger, and they're not
the new
hard.
Spirit arts are actually pretty solid, honestly.
Personally, I think that
and Pyro, the rest are bangers. I want them in hollows. Dan, please respond.
I like the Vipyro. It's like kind of slutty. I'm like a big fan of it.
He's like, yeah,
can we-
some of this?
I think
Can we
that's
say
where we wrap it.
Can we
I think
say
we just ended
slurs
on
on
that
this?
exact note.
Yeah.
It's serving.
have
night.
a good one. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in on, I think Tuesdays is when we're gonna do deck profiles. One day, maybe even Trish or MBT or myself will do one.
I'll post the deck profile when I top something. Otherwise, I'm talking on my ass.
Could be a while.
Yeah, I suck at this game.
Well, we gotta have events. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and until next time, have a great evening and good
Sell
luck.
me solar cards. Thank you.